Good morning and welcome back to Prepper Boss. Today is June 14th, 2022. A new report came out on inflation this morning. That overall inflation on an annualized basis last month was 10.6%. That means that your dollar last month, a year ago in the last month, is only worth 89.4 cents today. This is unsustainable. So my question to you today is, how many people are upside down in your finances? I know people that say, well, I can't get ahead. Inflation is killing us. Things are so expensive. But like I talked about in the last video, are you going to be a sheep or are you going to be a lion? Are you going to take charge of your own personal finances in spite of what's going on? Inflation is here whether you manage your finances or not. Also, tomorrow, the Fed is supposed to announce an increase in interest rates, which will make it more difficult for businesses to borrow money and invest in their business so they can supply more goods and services and balance out supply and demand. That interest rate is supposed to be somewhere between 0.5% and 0.75%. There has not been a single interest rate jump like that in over 40 years, since 1981. So what do you need to do to help yourself in these tumultuous times financially? Number one, you need to take charge of your finances. Make out a budget. Now, a budget is not what you spent last year. A budget is what you should reasonably expect to pay for goods and services, which means you might have to cut back. You do this by analyzing your spending from last year, and you go through everything line by line and find out the minimum amount you can get away with this next year. Another report this week was inflation in the last year has cost the average family $460 more per month. That's over $5,000 a year. Now, how many of you have an extra $5,000 laying around so that you can pay for all the government screw-ups that lead to this inflationary disaster? We all have to analyze where we are financially and manage it. If you don't manage your finances, your money will manage you. Number two, make a list of all your debt. Start with the smallest balance of your debt and pay that off as fast as possible. Then make the minimum payments on everything else. And when you wipe out the smallest one, take that minimum payment and apply it to the next largest debt, and then pay that off. You have to be out of debt. Another wake-up call would be for you to go through all your finances and find out how much you spend every year in interest. Interest is the price you pay for borrowing someone else's money. Most of you would be overwhelmingly surprised at how much money you've thrown down the tubes so you could borrow money for products that are now not worth anything. For instance, if you put a new TV on a credit card for $500, a year later, would you get $500 for it? Heck no. Maybe $100, maybe $200, but you still owe maybe $400 on your credit card, as they charge you 15, 18, 20% interest depending on your credit. Number 3, go line by line in your spending plan and eliminate things you don't need. Don't eat out. Maybe set aside $50 a month and go out once or twice instead of spending $400 or $500 a month. Take your lunch to work if you're eating out. Several days a week eating lunch. Just cut back wherever you can. If you've got some discretionary funds, start prepping. Start with water. You must have water. Water's pretty cheap. If you go to Walmart, you can get a 24 or 32 pack of bottles that you can use in an emergency that are maybe $4. If you're unfortunate to live in California, they snuck this CRV tax in where you got to pay a nickel more for every bottle, plastic bottle. They say it's like a deposit, but it's really a tax because you don't get your 5 cents back when you go to a recycling center. Load up on preps the best you can. Number 5, start an emergency fund. You need a few $1,000s in an emergency fund. What if the starter goes out in your car and it costs $400? Where's that coming from? You don't want it to come from the food budget, the utility budget. Stop spending money on stuff you don't need. Give some of these things some thought. I personally have done all of these. We hardly owe any money to anyone. We have been prepping for several years now. We have a fair supply of backup provisions, but it's one of those areas where you're never finished. It's a constant problem to be prepared for the future. And we're not just talking inflation. There could be a natural disaster, a hurricane, an earthquake, a tornado. 200 miles from where I am right now, 6 months ago, tornado wiped out a town. you need provisions in case of an emergency. I'm sure most of you have auto insurance in case of an emergency. You have a spare tire in case of a flat tire in your vehicle. Preparations, food, water, medical supplies, pet supplies. I've got 3 to 4 months of dog food in the freezer for our dog. But number one, your finances have to be in order. I'll link to some resource go to, and I can't stress enough how important it is to take charge, be a lion, be the boss. Look at yourself as you incorporated. It's up to you to get your affairs in order to make any sort of disaster that comes along more manageable. It reduces your risk. Think about it and give me some comments below on what your thoughts are about streamlining your finances, and ask questions if you need any help. I've done this for years, and once you decide to do it, it's very manageable. There's nothing to be afraid of. Because when it hits, you want to be in charge. You don't want to be like everyone else. Remember, if you don't manage your money, it'll manage you. Thanks for watching today. Please leave a like. Please subscribe and share with your friends. And all comments are welcome. See you on the next one.